You are listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello everyone, you are listening to We Saw the Devil. I'm Robin, and I'm here with a news update episode today. Apologies, guys. It was supposed to come out on Wednesday, but life gets in the way. If you recall in the previous episode, I discussed that I was adopting a shelter dog. I was on Facebook one day. I was scrolling through one of my 50 German short-haired pointer groups, and I saw her. It was a rescue, posted this picture of this sad GSP. And you can't save them all. And we see photos like that all the time, right? Well, for some reason, I could not get this dog out of my head. So I was like, screw it. I somehow have to make this happen. I put up a Facebook fundraiser, a bunch of people donated, and I literally met the $750 transport fee ask that I made in less than 24 hours. So thank you so much to every single person who donated. She was actually delivered yesterday to me via the transport. Amazing gentleman from actually here in Tennessee, drove all the way out to Kansas, picked her and 3 other dogs up and delivered them to Texas, Indiana, and myself. And she's just the absolute sweetest dog I think I have ever encountered in my entire life. She's amazing. And thank you again to everyone who donated. You can head over to our Facebook and see a picture of her if you would like. But that is why the episode is late. I've kind of had a full plate the last couple days getting ready for this. And now she's here. So today's episode is going to be a series of news cases, news headlines, just a couple actually, that I really find interesting and of importance this week. The news cycle has been intense, to say the least. There's been a lot going on. And yeah, there are a couple items that I would personally like to cover. Just as a heads up, this weekend, the second episode of the week will be coming out, and it is actually going to be on the case of Rebecca Barsotti. God, what an infuriating case. If you are not following this, I highly suggest you do so. True Crime Underground actually has a group dedicated to this case as well. Her body was just discovered a couple weeks ago, and they just positively ID'd it after waiting a period of time. I mean, the entire case, guys, we're going to break this down detail by detail, but she was missing from Superior, Montana for 10 months. They recently found her body. Her ex-husband literally threatened to kill her dog, and magically, as she went to go get her stuff from her ex-husband's house, she went missing, and she and her dog were found deceased by and in a river. Horrible case. So we're going to cover that one over the weekend in its entirety. But for the sake of this episode, just a really quick news update. Before we get into that, let's just get our quick housekeeping out of the way. You're listening to We Saw the Devil. I'm Robin. Our website is www.wesawthedevil.com. If you have any questions, concerns, complaints, compliments, you can email info@wesawthedevil.com. Always interested in, if you have a hometown case that you would like me to cover as well, happy to do so. Would love some additional feedback on that. Also on the website, you can find our Patreon, social media links, all of that good stuff as well. So check us out, wesawthedevil.com. All right, let's just go ahead and get into it. The first case I would like to talk about is Josh Duggar. It's the sentence that we have all been waiting on. Josh Duggar of the 4,552 children and counting fame was sentenced to 151 months in prison. Now, for the mathematically challenged who can't count that high using fingers and toes, such as myself, that's 12 and a half years. 12 and a half years in prison. And he was actually additionally sentenced to 20 years of supervised release after he serves his sentence. And the release will have special conditions. So let's just go through these conditions because I do have a bone to pick here. So when Josh exits prison, he will have to submit to the following. 1, allowing his person, residence, place of employment, vehicles, papers, computers, and any other electronic device or storage media to be searched at a reasonable time and in a reasonable manner, anytime there is suspicion that he may have violated any condition of his supervised release. Okay, fair. 2, if he wants to attend any kind of event where minors may be present, he will have to get permission from his probation officer. He will also have to get, 3, he will also have to get permission from his probation officer to use a computer, cell phone, or any electronic device. 4, internet monitoring software must be installed on every single electronic device he touches and owns at full cost to him. Now, I did look into this just out of my own personal curiosity in terms of how much is that, going to cost him? I don't know about you guys, but I have a handful of devices myself. I have a tablet. I have multiple tablets. I have a cell phone. I have a laptop. I have a desktop. I have an Xbox, a PlayStation, a Switch. I have a lot of devices. He will actually need internet monitoring software for everything that he uses that connects to the internet. So I imagine that is going to be a little pricey. So that makes me smile just a little bit. Number 5, submit to random DNA collection. 6, ban on all controlled substances. So if he thinks he's going to smoke a big fat joint, that ain't going to happen, or, get addicted to poppers. 6, not able to own a gun. So no more hunting trips with dad. Next, participate in a sex offender treatment program, again, at full cost to him. Periodic polygraph testing, again, if he's under the suspicion whatsoever that he may have violated any condition of release or these special conditions. And then also more than $50,000 in fines. So he is going to spend 12 years in prison, 12 and a half years in prison, and then he is going to come out and he's going to have to walk through all of these hoops in his release, which I do not feel bad about one bit. Now, earlier in the sentencing, the judge actually banned him from viewing pornography of any kind. And the defense team actually fucking challenged it. The judge conceded, which, I'm sorry. I mean, I personally believe if you've been viewing and sharing child pornography at the rate that Josh Duggar was, I mean, guys, Josh Duggar had pornographic images and video of 18-month-old children, like toddlers, like babies, the worst of the worst. And in his sentencing, his defense team was more worried about him not being able to legally jack off when he's released. I just cannot fathom this. He literally is being sentenced to 12 and a half years of prison because he had obtained videos of children being abused. And all of these, items for the special conditions and whatnot after release. And the defense team actually was like, no. He needs to be able to whack it. For some reason, that just disgusted me beyond belief. Floored by it. In any case, on the legal pornography condition, the judge actually did end up conceding because, an adult viewing legal porn is, as you know, a legal right. So, guess Josh Duggar came away with a big W on that one. But that's it. He's going to be in there for a bit. Now, if you followed any of the tabloid type of mess surrounding it, there's Amy Duggar King, who is actually Josh's cousin, and she put out a statement. She hates his guts. I'm pretty sure that she would not pee on him if he somehow caught on fire. She said, quote, "I knew him getting the maximum sentence wasn't going to be the easiest to prove since it's his first offense in the judge's eyes, which I hate. But at the same time, he cannot have his computer, he cannot hurt, exploit any more children, and when he sees his kids, he has to be supervised. And honestly, where he's going, I feel like the prisoners are just going to take care of him." I mean, she's clearly advocating for him to get fucked up in prison, and I can't say that I blame her. That's just what he did was absolutely foul. A lot of people are wondering about his wife, Anna Duggar. And I specifically searched for this. I did not practice self-care, and I went down the rabbit hole of Anna Duggar, and tried to figure out if she has made any sort of statement at all since this. And nope, she hasn't. Still complete silence. She's not said a word. The only thing circulating is that before sentencing, multiple sources said that she has not, was not, and would not ever consider divorcing Josh. She's been so horribly brainwashed by their extremist religion. If you missed a couple months ago, God, probably a year ago now, actually. God, where's time going? I did an episode on the Quiverful movement, not the full episode, but I did a segment on the Quiverful movement, which is the religion that the Duggar family subscribes to. And basically, it is women are completely useless meat sacks. We are completely worthless. Our only point to even living and breathing is to serve men and have children. And that is what she was brought up into. And that's also why, potentially, at least I personally believe, Josh Duggar probably is where he is currently. When he was a younger when he was a teenager, I can't say younger child, when he was a teenager, he actually molested multiple of his own multiple sisters. And do you think his parents got him psychiatric help? Do you think they, called the police or reported it or got any of his sisters into therapy? Nope. They just made it so that they could, the boys in the family and the girls couldn't be around each other unsupervised. I think they put like a door on an opposite side of the hinge of the door frame, but that's it. No one in that family got help. And Jim Bob literally said, this is a direct quote, boys will be boys. So that is the kind of family that we are playing with there. It's really, really sad. It's literally destroyed generations because, Josh and his sister, so much trauma. It's just going to carry on and carry on and carry on. And it's so sad. I hope Anna gets out of it and divorces Josh. Not looking likely because she actually showed up to his sentencing holding his hand. But I don't know. Maybe she will surprise us. Okay, and now I would like to talk about something, and this is actually another reason why I had a really, really, really hard time recording an episode this week, guys, is because I couldn't handle this. I really, honest to God, could not handle this. The Uvalde shooting in Texas. Now, I'm not going to go through it step by step or cover it. I actually covered the Buffalo Tops Market shooting in full 2 episodes ago. I wouldn't even consider covering this case because I can't. I have just been following it so closely, so closely, and I'm tired. I've been doing this podcast for 2 years. I've covered a handful of school shootings, mass shootings, and I just simply can't anymore. In 1999, Columbine happened, and I can somewhat understand when our country didn't quake and quiver and move for gun reform. That seemed like it was potentially just, a one-off at that point. It was a new phenomenon at that point, at least in the modern collective memory. And then, we're at 212 school shootings so far this year in America. We're just 5 months into 2022, guys. 212 shootings, school shootings, in just 5 months. 212. When 20 children died in Connecticut, mostly 6 and 7, if you recall, they were mostly 6 and 7 years old in Sandy Hook. I thought surely something will be done. Gun reform, mental health care initiatives, something common sense that both sides of the aisle could easily get behind. That was in December of 2012. We are quickly approaching the 10th year anniversary of the second deadliest school shooting in U.S. history. Only the Virginia Tech massacre is above it. And what do we as a nation have to show for it? Where has our collective sense of community and conscience taken us? First, nothing. And second, nowhere. And it's very clear where the blame lies with this, in my opinion. We live in a country that does nothing when AR-15s are repeatedly taken into classrooms and used to slaughter children. And I'm not even talking about tops, the Vegas massacre, all of the garlic festival, for God's sake, like dozens and dozens and dozens. I actually saw a full list of mass shootings, including school, public, everything, that utilize, in particular, AR-15 style rifles. And we're bordering over 100, like hundreds of them. I mean, but we're okay. We do nothing when they're repeatedly taken into classrooms and used to slaughter children in particular. Slaughter. Did you know that this week in Uvalde, they had to use DNA tests to identify most of the victims? DNA tests. Want to know why? Because when you use that kind of weapon and shoot small children, it literally disfigures them beyond recognition in one single bullet. If they're shot at especially close range, such as this one and Sandy Hook, also due to their age, some of the children, their remains basically look like they were pretty much the victims of a suicide bomb, of like a suicide bomb, suicide vest. They exploded, basically. I'm going to read an article, a CNN article, an interview with 11-year-old Maya Cirillo. She was an 11-year-old survivor of Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, and she was in the classroom when it all happened. And I just feel like this hit me so deeply. So Maya Cirillo spoke exclusively to CNN about her horrific experience that day inside the classroom where the mass shooting took place that killed 19 of her classmates and 2 of her teachers. She said that she and her classmates were watching the movie Lilo and Stitch in a classroom shared by 2 teachers, Ava Morales and Irma Garcia. The students were finished with their lessons when the teachers got word that there was a shooter in the building. One teacher went to lock the door, but Maya says that the shooter was already right there and shot out the window in the door. She described it all happening so fast. Her teacher backed into the classroom and the gunman followed. She told CNN that he made eye contact with one of the teachers, said, "Good night," and then shot her. He opened fire, shooting the other teacher and many of Maya's friends. She said bullets flew by and fragments hit her shoulders and head. The girl was later treated at the hospital and released with fragment wounds. She described to CNN that clumps of her hair were now falling out. Maya said after shooting students in her class, the gunman went through a door into an adjoining classroom. She heard screams and the sound of shots in that classroom. After the shots stopped, though, she says the shooter started playing loud music. Sad music, she said. The girl and a friend managed to get her dead teacher's phone and call 911 for help. She said she told a dispatcher, "Please come, we're in trouble." Maya said she was scared the gunman would return to her classroom to kill her and a few other surviving friends. So, she dipped her hands in the blood of a classmate who lay next to her, already dead, and then smeared the blood all over herself to play dead. Maya said it felt like 3 hours that she lay there, covered in her classmates' blood, with her friends. She told CNN that she assumed at that point the police hadn't arrived yet on the scene. Maya's mother said that her daughter is traumatized and can't sleep. In an effort to keep herself covered, Maya sat for the interview wrapped in a blanket despite the very warm temperatures. A cell phone alarm accidentally went off during the interview, and Maya was visibly unnerved by the noise. Her mother said that that's been happening a lot and described an earlier incident where they were at a car wash and the sound of the vacuum cleaner, quote, completely set her off. Maya was too scared to speak on camera or to a man because of what she experienced, but she told CNN that she wanted to share her story so people can know what it's like to live through a school shooting. She says hopefully it can help prevent a tragedy like this from happening to other children. Guys, like, I just can't. When, and additional news there. So when Maya Cirillo left the classroom, she survived the shooting. She, just imagine this for a moment. You are an 11-year-old child, or if you have a child, think about it, that your child is sitting watching Lilo and Stitch. Earlier that morning, they had a presentation and award ceremony. So a lot of those children had just seen their parents earlier in the day. They're awarded various awards, academic, extracurricular, like little award ceremony. They had good snacks, last week of school, and they were settling in to watch Lilo and Stitch. And all of a sudden, a gunman enters the classroom, starts shooting shit up. And your 11-year-old child, or you, however you're visualizing this, you see your best friend blown apart in front of you. And instinctually, somehow, you knew your best chance of survival was to lean down, grab her brains and blood, and rub it all over yourself in order to play dead. In what world is that acceptable, and should that be normalized? But it gets better. When Maya Cirillo left that classroom, the first person she came across was a father searching for his daughter. He saw her and saw the blood, and he asked Maya if she was injured. And she explained to this man how she used the blood to survive from her fellow classmate. That father, that man was the father of the girl whose blood that she used to survive. It was his daughter whose blood she used. And there she was explaining to him that's what she did. 11 years old, and she will need very intense therapy for most of, if not all, in the rest of her entire life. She was in a situation that many combat veterans never even experience. And last week, I'm not sure if you heard about this, but last week, the Girl Scouts of America posthumously bestowed upon Amory Jo Garza, a 10-year-old little girl who died in the Uvalde shooting, one of the absolute highest honors in Girl Scouts, the Bronze Cross. Now, for those of you who are not aware, the Bronze Cross is awarded for saving or attempting to save life at the risk of the Girl Scouts' own life. Again, let me repeat that. The Bronze Cross is awarded for saving or attempting to save life at the risk of the Girl Scouts' own life. They posthumously awarded it to a 10-year-old victim of a school shooting. Now, if that doesn't say something about where we are here in America, when the Girl Scouts, the freaking Girl Scouts, are giving away medals for bravery under fire. And I haven't even been able to bring myself into seeing if this happened or not, but a couple days ago, 2 of the parents were actually considering holding open casket funerals, hoping that it would be enough to spark legislative change in America. Can you imagine not only the level of bravery and selflessness that that act actually entails, but also how traumatic it would be for everyone? And I don't know if any of the parents went through with it. I know that at least 2 of them had said yes, they were going to. And then, you know what? More mass shootings. We had one in Oklahoma. We have had multiple others since then. And the news about the parents has kind of gone into the background, and now it's focusing on the corruption and the lies that came out of this from law enforcement. But I just can't imagine. I can't imagine my young child being blown into pieces and then choosing to have an open casket funeral because I'm so desperate in my grief and pain to not let this happen again to someone else for absolutely no reason. But you know what? I have zero faith that anything will change, especially in the current political climate that we find ourselves in. And, I'm sure that me even talking about this, our political climate is so needlessly supercharged right now. I mean, if someone says, gun law reforms or mental health, initiatives or anything like that, it pisses off someone from either side. It just pisses off someone from either side. And if me speaking so directly in favor of either of these things, but particularly in favor of gun law reforms, if that somehow upsets any of you, like as a listener, fuck off. I'm so tired of people standing astride the corpses of children, voicing their desire to own weapons in some sort of fucked up Rambo fever dream. It's enough. It's long been enough. And it has to stop. And I know that it's not going to. And that's the most fucked up part about all of this, and why I've just like, I've literally been too depressed to even record an episode. And, you know, we've gone through all these school shootings and each one is hard, but this one was the tip of the scale for me. Like, I can't handle this anymore. And I can't imagine. My heart goes out to all of the parents who are scared every single time they see their child off to school in the morning. You know, hugging them extra hard, wondering if that could be the last time that they hold them. My heart goes out to the teachers. I mean, Jesus, the teachers who have to endure all of this, the lockdown drills, knowing that there's always the possibility that they may one day have to make a decision to either lock a student out of their room, you know, lock a student that they know and love outside in the hallway in the path of a shooter, or have to shield their students or be that last line of defense, you know, or people are calling for teachers to have handguns or teachers to have guns in order to be that last line of defense. Hell, half the states in this country can't even agree for teachers to pick out a fucking book, much less you're going to give them guns to shoot someone with. I mean, all of this just to save the lives of those in their classroom. And most of all, my heart goes out to all of the children who already have, and may potentially have to deal with being a statistic, a fatality, an injury. You know, forced to wipe the blood and brain matter off of their 10-year-old best friend next to them and smear it all over their face to play dead, hoping that they aren't next. Moving on. So Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell will be tried together. The judge granted the state's motion to continue Lori Vallow's trial from October of 2022 to January of 2023. So what that means is that she and Chad Daybell will in fact be tried together, despite Lori not waiving the right to a speedy trial during her arraignment. I've discussed this in previous episodes as far as why, you know, the state wants this, and why, you know, for us and for a conviction, a full conviction, is probably the best case scenario. But good news there. So January 2023, guys. Also, just to quickly touch on it, and I'm covering this one because it actually hit fairly, you know, kind of close to home where I used to live in Portland and back in Oregon. 13-year-old Milana Lee was a student at Conestoga Middle School in Beaverton, Oregon, which is a suburb of Portland proper. She actually left her apartment on May 9th, and she didn't come home. She didn't return. She didn't come home. Her mother reported her missing at 1:19 p.m., but then the next day, her body was found a mile away in a stream. And police have been very, 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 very tight-lipped about the investigation into this, as well as the manner in which she died as well. But her death was, in fact, ruled as a homicide. It was ruled a homicide. There was no arrest for about a week and a half. And then on May 20th, they arrested a 16-year-old boy for her murder. His name is Daniel Gore. Prosecutors have indicated that they will attempt to try him as an adult. And horrible, horrible case. If you Google Milana, Milana Lee, you can read up on her story. She's absolutely adorable. Everyone said that she was just like kind of the class clown, super funny. She actually spoke Russian, was her native language. And it's just so incredibly sad. Is it just me, or does it seem like we've seen a lot of stories recently, and there's been an uptick somehow in cases of kids killing other kids? Like, I'm not talking 17, 18 year olds. I'm talking like 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds murdering younger children. It's insane to me, but it's so incredibly sad. Especially for her mom, just awful. But that kind of stuff is actually somewhat rare in Portland, much less, say, Beaverton. So I just wanted to touch on that. That is a case that I want to follow, you know, see if Daniel Gore is going to be tried as an adult, and also the manner in which she died. It's absolutely horrific. And finally, the New Hampshire decapitation case. This is a crazy one. Talk about going into a blind rage. 32-year-old New Hampshire man Armando Barron was sentenced to life in prison plus 45 years last Friday. That's a pretty big sentence, right? And I think it's more than appropriate. Back in September of 2020, which quite literally feels like 3 decades ago, Armando Barron decided that his wife, Brittany Barron, was acting suspiciously. So he confronted her about it. And she was like, yep, I'm not in love with you. I don't want to be with you anymore. And I want a divorce. They shared 3 children. So for the following week, she was always on her phone, always. So on September 20th, he decided to snoop on her phone, check it out, and check her social media and messages. And when he did, he realized that she was actively engaged with a male coworker named Jonathan Emerald on Snapchat. Emerald worked at the same medical supply company as Brittany, and some of the text messages were a bit risque, and it was very, very clear that they were in some sort of flirtatious relationship. In reality, Brittany Barron had not yet slept with Jonathan Emerald. Brittany Barron would later testify that Armando confronted her about the messages in the bathroom, grabbing her by the throat and screaming, "Are we fucking serious right now, Britt?" He then yelled at their children and told them to go next door to their grandmother's house where his mother lived, and then he shut the bathroom door. He held Brittany down by her throat and punched her repeatedly, causing severe bruising and an eye hemorrhage. And he reportedly said, "You know you're going to die tonight, right?" So, in a rage, Armando basically began to plan a murder almost immediately. And he told his wife that they were going to go for a ride. So, when they got in the car, Armando used Brittany's phone to text Jonathan Emerald and basically invited to meet him, who Jonathan thought to be Brittany, at a Net Wayside Park in Rindge. And as soon as Jonathan arrived, Armando set out and said, "So, you're trying to fuck my wife?" And then he began to beat him repeatedly, like punching, kicking, slapping, and eventually kicking and stomping his face. He even forced Brittany at gunpoint to cut his arms. Jonathan Emerald was then forced into the trunk of his own Subaru hatchback, and Jonathan knew that there was a machete in his car, and this actually came out more recently. Jonathan knew that he had a machete in his car, and he begged Brittany to grab it. See, what happened was Armando had just beaten the shit out of Jonathan Emerald physically, and was going back to his own car dumped Jonathan in the trunk, in the hatchback, and then was going back to his own car to grab his gun. So, Brittany and Jonathan, like her lover, were left alone for about a minute and a half. And Jonathan Emerald, severely wounded, was begging Brittany to grab the machete, grab the machete, take it, kill him, save my life, save me, save us, get the machete. And Brittany refused. She refused to take it. She said that she was too scared of being murdered herself, and didn't believe that she could actually make a successful attack. So Armando brought a handgun back. He pointed it at Brittany and ordered her to shoot Jonathan. Brittany refused. Instead, he got her to stand on his neck with her full weight in an attempt to strangle him. So Armando then, at gunpoint, forced Brittany to slash Jonathan's wrists and arms again with the machete. Armando himself then took a few hacks with a knife. But Jonathan Emerald was still alive and writhing in the trunk of his Subaru. So Armando ended up shooting Jonathan 3 times, twice in the chest and once in the head. However, somehow Jonathan was still not yet dead. Armando then ordered Brittany to drive Jonathan's Subaru back to their home to retrieve their camping gear, which they did. And then the entire drive back to their house, Jonathan was dying. He was moaning, but, Brittany later testified that he was moaning over and over again, gurgling, the death gurgle, moaning. This is just a side note, and it's really disturbing and kind of awful. But when I did 911 dispatch in my early 20s, in training, we actually had to listen to a 911 call, that quintessential death gurgle of someone dying and taking their last final few breaths. And that is a haunting, haunting, haunting sound. So imagine for a moment that you're her and you're in the car with your, for all intents and purposes, your boyfriend, and they're in the trunk. You've basically helped, quasi murder them, and you're just hearing the death gurgle and the moaning. I can't fathom that. So they get back to their house, they get their camping gear, and then, Jonathan Emerald is dead at this point. So Brittany, they set out. And so Brittany followed Armando, and they drove 4 hours north to Errol, New Hampshire. Armando ended up stopping at a general store, and he bought cleaning supplies and a saw. Then they went and stopped at a remote campsite. Armando burned Jonathan's ID and then forced Brittany at gunpoint to clean up Jonathan's car with the supplies that he just bought. Armando then produced the saw and instructed Brittany to decapitate Jonathan and dispose of his body with a tarp. He then basically said peace and left her there and returned to their home 4 hours south. So Brittany was left there in the middle of the woods, which that is a very, 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 very remote area of woods. And they have a sincere bear problem as well. Not a very safe place to be. But it is frequently visited by hunters. So hunters actually ended up stumbling across Brittany while she was in the woods attempting to conceal and dispose of the evidence. And she reportedly told them when they came across her, "Oh, I'm in trouble." So these hunters called the New Hampshire Fish and Game, and 2 conservation officers were then dispatched to look for her. And she pretty much confessed to everything. Armando was taken into custody shortly thereafter. And, when police interviewed their friends, family, and coworkers, it became clear that Armando had already, gotten his story straight and had a narrative in check. He told everyone that Brittany went camping, and that's also the reason that he used her phone, pretending to be her, to text her job and resign. Just, I'm moving away. So Brittany Barron actually was put on trial back in 2021 and in October of 2021, and she was sentenced to 3.5 to 7 years in prison, with 2 years suspended from the minimum and maximum sentences. She also got 377 days of credit for time already served, and she was let out on parole earlier last month, just in time to testify in Armando Barron's trial. So last week, Armando Barron went on trial, and a New Hampshire judge handed down life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 45 to 135 years, which I can think of absolutely nothing better. I mean, that case is absolutely horrendous. It's just, talk about a blind rage and losing your shit. It's just unfathomable. But that case is all tied up. There is a little bit of contention in terms of Jonathan Emerald's family fully puts the blame on Brittany in terms of her being guilty, participating in his murder, attempting to help cover up the evidence. Of course, Armando blamed Brittany and said that she's the one who fired the lethal shots and so on and so forth. And she came out and was like, nope, he did it. But the photographic evidence of her injuries are just terrifying. He literally beat her to a pulp. And I think that probably did it with the jury in terms of believing that he was the one with the anger problem. But absolutely horrific. But that's it for today, guys. Just those are a couple of news pieces that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, this weekend, I'm going to have the second episode come out, probably Sunday. And that episode is going to be on the Rebecca Barsotti case. And just go ahead, practice some self-care now. This case is so infuriating in terms of law enforcement, actually. It's very rare. Oh, excuse me. It's very rare that a case just screams corruption to the degree that this one does. This one will make you see red. But again, if you're unfamiliar, I talked about it earlier in this episode. Rebecca Bersati was 33 years old. She was married to a man who was supposedly a veteran with an extensive combat history, and they were living in Montana, and apparently he was super abusive, like super short temper, angry, and abusive. And she decided to separate, leave, file for divorce. And so she did, and she needed to get some of her stuff. And so she was meeting supposedly with like an intermediary, like a third party. Legally she couldn't go back to the house with him there. So she was planning on meeting with a third party in order to collect her things. And she disappeared, was never seen or heard from again. And that was after her ex-husband had made a series of threats and ongoing threats against her life, her parents' life, her family's life, and her dog's life. By the way, he's still walking around just fine, and law enforcement is actually defending him without any evidence. So it's going to be a fun one. That's coming out on Sunday. But thanks again, guys. Thank you for listening. As always, you can check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com. Any questions, concerns, complaints, or compliments, you can always email info@WeSawTheDevil and send a message. Until next crime.